Can we put up the glory hole diagram? So it's just a hollow brick chamber with two gas burners in the side. And when we get the glass hot and soft, we sit down, we work it. It starts to get stiff. We go back to the glory hole, heat it up again, make it soft again. So if you think about the glass like wax, you know, when you get wax hot, it gets soft, but fairly quickly, it starts to stiffen again. So you end up going back and forth, back and forth. So there's two kinds of furnaces. There's the glory holes, and then there's the glass furnaces. Where that young man is there now, that's the glass furnace. So behind that door, there's a big ceramic tank. If you look up on the big screen, you'll see a diagram. In that ceramic tank is 1,000 pounds of molten glass. Molten glass. Yep, the glass in the furnace has the consistency of honey. So it's like dipping into a big jar of honey. You dip it in, twirl it around, a little bit collects around the end of the pipe. The pipe is hollow, so when you blow, it blows up like a little balloon. No, I don't think so. I mean, they do it the way they do it. Nope. The man, tall guy with the orange glasses, that's Ben Cobb. He's our guest artist today. What? So everyone else working on the floor is working for Ben. So they're all doing making various parts, doing preparation for Ben's sculptures. Ben has been working in glass for 25 years. He's originally from Rhode Island. He now lives and works here in Tacoma, and he's the head of our glass shop. So over in the center, working at the center bench, is our guest artist, Ben Cobb. He's working with members of our Museum of Glass Hot Shop team. Over on the right, we have a little workshop for our visitors where some of the young artists from the Hilltop Artist Program are walking them through making a simple object. So over in the center, we're about to color the bubble that Ben's going to use for his sculpture. Ben has blown a bubble of clear glass. Nick, in the brown shorts, is heating up a chunk of colored glass, and we're going to melt the colored glass over the clear glass. All the glass that's in our furnaces is clear. It has no color. We buy our colored glass separately in the form of these bars. We buy it like an artist buys paint, red, yellow, pink, and blue. We blow a bubble of clear glass, we cut off a chunk of colored glass, and then we melt a layer of colored glass over the clear glass. We then dip it in more clear glass, so the object looks colored, but if you cut through it, you would see it's just that one skinny layer of colored glass. Now, in a big factory where you're going to make everything the same color, then you just melt a big tank of colored glass and you dip into it. But here, we're making red things, purple things, blue things, so we color each piece individually by melting on a layer of colored glass. So here they go. We drop on a big blob of colored glass, snip it off, and then push it back a little bit. We're going to heat that up again and smear it till it entirely coats the original bubble. So we have some pictures of Mr. Cobb's sculptures. Can we put up Ben's work, please? So if you look up on the big screen, and we'll be making this first piece will be similar in character to these. It's not going to be the same shape, it's not going to be the same color, but sort of similar in character. If you notice, there's a couple of Ben's pieces in the display case as you walked in the door. There were two of them sitting there. Very So now Ben is rolling the glass on the steel table. That's called the Marver, M-A-R-V-E-R. You notice as he rolls it on the table, the orange glow from the glass disappears. The orange glow that you're seeing is the glow from the heat. It's like when you look in a toaster and the wires are hot, they glow orange. You look at an electric stove, when the burners are hot, they glow orange. So does the glass. Yes. It looks orange. It's just because it's hot. What you're seeing is the glow from the heat. Natural gas and forced air. So for this piece, we want one color showing on the inside and a different color showing on the outside. So we've coated it with the blue, I think it's blue, and now Nick is heating up another color, and we're going to melt it over that. So we'll have two layers, and when you look into the piece, the inside will look different than the outside. So now we're going to add the second color. And we're going to do the same thing, push it back a little and smear it. The two colors won't mix, they'll stay as separate layers. So in the center, Ben's going to round that out, make it nice and even. And then he's going to let it cool and stiffen a bit. And then we're going to start coating it with clear glass. So when you heat up glass, some of the glass sort of retains its color, but some of the glass looks very different. The outer layer, and I just know this because I asked him, I can't see it, but the outer layer is red. The first layer was blue, and the outer layer is red. Red is a very funny color. When it's very hot, it looks orange. When it's sort of medium hot, it looks brown. And when it's getting cooler, it looks almost black. And then when it cools down, the thing it turns into lipstick red. Can we put up some of Ben's work up on the big screen? The 3D pieces? So he's making sculptures similar to those. So he's just at the very beginning. He's put 2 layers of different colored glass on top of a clear bubble. Black hat, Gabe, 22. Does anybody have any questions? Can we put up one of Ben's sculptures again? Well, he's not making that one. He's making something in that style. We don't have any pictures of the one he's making because he hasn't made it yet. you look over to the right, you'll see one of our visitors trying glass making. In those stainless steel bowls, there's little chips of colored glass called frit, F-R-I-T, like this stuff. So we're taking the hot glass out of the furnace, which is clear. We're rolling it in little chips of colored glass and then melting them on. If you look up on the big screen, you see a close-up. You can see that we have two colors of glass. You see one little peeking out from underneath. The layer on the outside, the very outside, is red, and the layer underneath it is blue. The colors you're actually seeing are somewhat distorted by the heat. So over to the left, Ben has just dipped his bubble in our tank full of molten glass. As you can see the glass as it drips off into that steel can, how fluid the molten glass actually is. Each time we dip it into the big tank of molten glass, only a certain amount sticks. So when we want to make something big, we have to dip it in, shape it, make it nice and round, let it cool, and then we dip it in again a second time, or a third time, or a fourth time, until we have all the glass we need to make whatever we're making. The dark pad in Ben's hand is just folded up newspaper soaked in water, ordinary newspaper. As long as the newspaper is wet, the paper doesn't burn too much, and it doesn't leave any marks as he shapes the glass. So Ben is doing what's called stuffing a color cup. we made a shape like this. This is called a color cup. And we made it with a fancy pattern on the outside with all sorts of stripes. So we're taking our blue and red bubble, and we stuff it in here. Then we have a stripe layer on the outside, then red underneath that, and then blue underneath that. So Sarah, in the gray shirt, she's got a torch, and she's heating up this little edge here. And so we're making this edge soft, and as he rolls it against the table, we'll be able to tuck this edge in. Once he gets that all shaped up the way he wants to, we'll then start coating it with more clear molten glass. So all the color and the patterns will be on the inside, but once we blow it up, it'll look like the thing is thoroughly colored. So Ben is shaping it with a wet newspaper. You notice that one of the glass blowers is seated to the left of the workbench. He's the guy that's blowing. He's blowing through the steel tube, the blowpipe, and inflating the glass at the same time Ben shapes it. Every once in a while, you guys should look up at the big screen, because we often have close-ups that you can't see from a distance. You get a little bit clearer idea of what the stuff looks like. So if you look up in the If you look up on the big screen now, you can see the wiggly lines. Those are other pieces of colored glass melted in. When you melt two pieces of glass together, the colors stick to each other, but they don't mix. So it's like putting two different colored pieces of bubble gum together. They'll stick to each other, but the colors will stay separate. So now Ben is getting ready to drill a hole in that bubble. He's got an ordinary electric drill. Chucked up in the electric drill is a sharpened tungsten rod. He heats the tip of the tungsten rod till it's glowing, and then he can drill right into the hot glass. Could we put up one of the pictures of Ben's sculptures? You see those windows, the little clear spaces? When we drill these holes, eventually those are going to become the little windows in the sculpture. You guys have any questions? You guys? Poured some glass over it, and we grabbed it and twisted it. All these little stripes twisted up and made the little twisted ribbon in the middle. Yeah. Pretty neat, huh? You'd like to win a piece of glass to take home with you? Did she have a little piece? Okay. How old are you? 4.5. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question. Get the question right. Get a piece of glass. Does that sound fair? Okay. My question is, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Chocolate chip. Correct. And when the holes stretch, there's only going to be clear glass over the empty area. Yeah. So Ben is gathering over his bubble. When we dip it into the molten glass, it's called gather. He's taking a gather. He'll drip some of the excess off into that steel can. We'll save that excess glass, and that'll eventually go back in the furnace. So now he's rounding it out again, making it nice and even. His assistant is holding a wooden paddle in front of his arm to shield him from the heat. So where you see the little bubbles, that's where the windows are going to be, where you'll see into the interior. Making these little guys we're going to use to decorate a piece later on. We can melt it into the surface. Videos are going upstairs. Can we put up one of Ben's pieces up on the big screen? He's making a sculpture similar to that. Not the same, but in that shape. And where those little bubbles are, that's where those little windows are going to be in the finished sculpture. Right. It's actually blue on the inside, red on the outside, and then stripes over that. Okay, it's all glass. There's really two questions. The only way you can only color glass itself when you first cook it up from scratch. The things that color glass are mostly metal. Different metals give it different colors. If you cook up the raw ingredients of glass, cobalt, you get blue, chromium, you get green, sulfur is amber. It's not always directly the color of the material you put in it. A little bit of gold makes it pink. A lot of gold makes it beautiful. So, you're very welcome. Thanks for coming in. So, let me finish. So, what we do is colored glass. You buy it in various. You buy it in little chips. You buy it in little bars. And then we melt colored glass onto our clear mugs. So if we're going to make an orange bowl, fill a bubble of clear glass, cut off a chunk of orange, heat it up, melt it on, take a little layer of orange, dip it in more clear glass. What we do here is we buy different colors of glass and melt it on top. Yeah, kind of. time you dip the pipe into the molten glass, only a certain amount will stick. Dip it in, a little bit of ball of glass collects around the end of the pipe, blow, let that harden. Just keep dipping it in, don't get all the glass. Nope, he's not blowing it. He's making these. These are solid. I think he's making one of these. And we're going to melt these into other pieces of glass to decorate. So I'm talking about the dipping and the blowing. Say what? Can we put up the glass furnace diagram for a moment? So, if you, yeah, so that's what it looks like behind those closed doors. So you see over there on the right, to the right of center, with a square hole in the steel wall? That's a glass furnace. And inside it looks like the picture on the screen. Just all clear glass. All the colors. Guys have about an average of 20 years under their belt. So in the center is our guest artist, Ben Cobb. He's been working in glass for 25 years. He shows his work all over the United States. He shows at the Blue Rain Gallery in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in the Duncan McClellan Gallery in Florida, and locally at the Traver Gallery, Traver, in Seattle. Mr. Cobb is the head of our glass shop here at the museum. He's been here since the museum opened. He's done demonstrations of glassmaking in the Czech Republic, in Sweden. So those of you who've been here for a little while, you remember that he's drilled some holes in the bubble and then coated them with clear glass. And now you can see as he expands the bubble, as he blows it up, those become little windows. You can see into the interior of the glass. So now Ben is going to squeeze the glass and make a narrow part at the very top. He's going to make a sharp crease And that crease will be the place where we can break the glass away from the metal pipe once we're done shaping. The tool in his hand that he's squeezing the glass with is called the jacks, and making that crease is called jacking it down. Does anybody have any questions? Can we put up a picture of Ben's sculpture again? So this is not exactly the piece he's making, but this is a kind of a similar one. So gives you an idea of where he's going. So he's making us something in this style. You see that where that door is? You see that door straight ahead? Behind that door, there's a big pot of molten glass, melted glass. So we take the steel pipes and we dip them into the molten glass like you dip one of those wooden honey dippers into a jar of honey. You know what honey is, right? The glass in that pot is like honey. So it's like dipping into a big jar of honey. Sort of. Went wrong. Okay, well, it didn't quite come out the way Mr. Cobb had planned. So there was the little windows were a little too close, and the border between them got messed up. So he's going to make another one. So we're going to start again. Ben's So he's doing something different now. For another project, he's casting some pieces. He's got a plaster mold in the oven, and we're filling the plaster molds with molten glass, making small kind of bivalve mollusks. And this will be part of another project that he's doing. So we have a bunch of different projects going on. Over on the far right, we have some of our visitors trying out glass making. They're working with some young artists from the Hilltop Artist Program in the Tacoma Public Schools, and they're making glass pumpkins. Ben Cobb, in the orange glasses, our guest artist, is casting some mollusks, and they can become part of an installation that he's doing at the Bellevue Art Museum. So he's got a plaster mold in this oven, and he's filling the plaster molds with glass. Can we play color overlay?
The color in glass comes from adding various materials to the mixture of raw ingredients called batch. Most of the colorants are compounds containing some kind of metal. For example, adding cobalt to clear glass creates a deep blue. Tin and antimony can be used to create white glass, and gold chloride can produce a rich red or pink colored glass. Colored glass is melted in furnaces, just like clear glass, and then is usually rolled into bars for storage and easy application. In order to apply color bar to a bubble, we first need to preheat the color to approximately 950 or 1000 degrees Fahrenheit in a color oven or garage. Once warm, The color is then picked up on the end of a punty rod using a little bit of clear glass as a support. The color is then heated in the 2300 degree glory hole to soften it and make it malleable, while another artist creates a small bubble of clear glass on a blowpipe. Once warm, the color is dropped over the clear bubble, and then using a variety of hand tools or the steel marver, the color is rolled back over the clear in an even layer. This process is called dropping color, or creating a color overlay. Depending on the project, that bubble is then usually gathered over with clear glass and blown into the final form. The finished product may appear to be all made from colored glass, but when viewed in cross-section, we can see that there is only a thin layer of color sandwiched between many layers of clear glass.
So over to the right, Mr. Cobb is putting on some protective clothing, and I think he's going to grab his plaster mold. He's filled the mold with glass, and now we're going to put it into a different oven where it's going to cool slowly overnight so the glass doesn't break. So over on the right, some young artists from the Hilltop Artist Program at the Tacoma Public Schools are walking some of our visitors through making a glass pumpkin. We're going to be doing this again on the 18th of October, and that session you'll be making a ghost. So if you're interested in giving glass blowing a try, go to our front desk and you can sign up. We do it by appointment. We put up the goblin slide. So we're getting started on our next sculpture in the center. All the glass that's in our furnaces is clear. It has no color. We buy our colored glass separately in the form of these bars. We buy it like an artist buys paint, red, yellow, pink, blue. We blow a bubble of clear glass from our furnace. We heat up a chunk of colored glass, and then we melt a layer of colored glass over our clear glass. We then dip that in more clear glass. So what you get is something that looks colored, but if you cut through it, you would see it's just this one skinny layer. So Nick in the center, the man with the dark blue shirt, he's heating up a chunk of blue glass, one of these rods. One of the other glass blowers will blow a bubble of clear glass, and then we'll melt the blue glass onto the clear glass. So the man sitting at the bench right now, that's Ben Cobb, that's our guest artist. He's dipped his steel pipe in some molten glass. And he's going to blow that glass, he's going to blow a small clear bubble, and we're going to coat it with the colored glass. And this will be the beginning of the sculpture. He rolls the glass on the steel table into a little cylindrical shape, and then he's going to blow just one little puff of air into the pipe and close it up with his thumb. And then the heat and pressure will expand the air and blow out the first bubble. One puff, close it up, and watch the glass. Little bubble pops out the end. That's how we start almost every hollow object that we make, whether it's a wine glass, a sculpture, a light lampshade. So Ben's going to let his bubble cool off and stiffen. Nick's standing up with the shorts. He's heating up the colored glass, and we're going to melt the colored glass over the clear glass. You guys have any questions? Anything you'd like to know? So we've dropped on a blob of the colored glass. Now we're going to smear it back until it coats the entire bubble. You can really only color the glass when you first cook it up. It's like making a cake. You get all the ingredients together and you bake them. The things that color glass are mostly metals. Different metals make it different colors. Cobalt makes it blue. A little bit of gold makes it pink. A lot of gold makes it a beautiful ruby red. If you're the trying glass blowing, yes, it's $60 for non-members and $45 for members. But we're all full up this weekend. We do it by appointment, and all the appointments are full. So there's no. But if you guys live around here, we're going to be doing it again on the 18th of October. Yeah, we're gonna blow a little right this very moment. Sarah, the woman, she's gonna blow into the steel tube as Ben shapes it. So for this sculpture, we want two colors, one laid on top of the other. So the first color seems like kind of a baby blue. And Nick, the man crossing the center, he's got the second color that goes on top. Can we put up one of Ben's sculptures? So if you look, it's one color on the inside and a different color on the outside. We do that by coating the original bubble with color number 1, and then we put on top of that color number 2. Color number 2 is the one you see from the outside, and color number 1 is the one that you'll see from the inside. Once again, we're going to melt on the second color. When we do this, it's called a color overlay. The two colored glasses will stick to each other, but the colors won't mix. They'll form very distinct separate layers. We're going to melt them onto another bubble for a different project this afternoon. So that's what Gabe's doing over there. Well, when we have a guest artist like Ben, he takes everything home with him, everything he makes, and then he'll leave one piece for the museum. Maybe, maybe not. It's a little special. The glass that goes into a bottle or a window is made to harden very quickly, so a machine can make 1,000 bottles an hour. Our glass is made to harden slowly, so you can shape it by hand. That's the main difference. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, our guest artist, Benjamin Cobb, will be giving a talk here in the Hot Shop, and he'll tell you about all his career, his travels, all the interesting things he's done and made. Most of you won't be here tomorrow, so you can watch it on the internet if you go to museumofglass.org and click on Experience and then the Hot Shop, and we should be streaming that live. I'm not sure. Let me ask. Blue. The transparent blue over an opaque baby blue. So now we're going to coat our bubble with the two colors, dip it into the clear molten glass. So now we have 3 layers, actually 4, a clear layer of glass, an opaque blue over that, and a transparent blue over that, and some more clear glass over that. Each time we dip it in, we want to round it out, make it nice and even. We use a tool called the block, B-L-O-C-K. It's made out of wood. It's stored in a bucket of water. As long as the wood is wet, the tool doesn't burn too much, and it doesn't leave any marks as we shape the glass. So the next big part of this operation is called stuffing a color cup. We blew a small, what looks like a small bowl. We call it a color cup. And it has the one, it's in that oven over there. And it has a fancy squiggly line pattern on it. We're going to take Ben's bubble that he's preparing now, and we're going to drop it inside and blow. And so we'll have some colors on the inside and the fancy squiggly design on the outside. Can we put up stuffing a color cup? So if you look up on the big screen, this is what I mean by stuffing a color cup. We blow a little bowl shape, and then we drop another bubble inside and fill it up. This will give us a different design or a different color on the outside than on the inside. So the man crouched down to the left, he's the guy that's blowing. He's inflating the glass just a little bit at a time as Ben Cobb, our guest artist, shapes it. The gray pad in Ben's hand is just folded up newspaper soaked in water. As long as the newspaper is wet, the paper doesn't burn too much, it doesn't leave any marks as he shapes the glass.
For me, the draw with glass is that even though you're working with the same
Okay, so can we put up one of Ben's pieces with the windows? So if you look up on the big screen, Ben is making a sculpture similar to this, and you'll see that it has like little windows. We can see into the interior, clear windows. And this is how we make them. While Ben has got a electric drill. Chucked up in the electric drill is a sharpened rod of tungsten. We heat up the tungsten rod till it's glowing hot, and then we can drill right into the molten glass. We'll coat that whole bubble with more clear molten glass, and when we blow it up, the place where the hole was will expand and become a little window into the interior of the sculpture. He just drills right into that hot glass. So now we're letting that bubble cool and stiffen a bit, and we're going to dip it again into our tank of clear molten glass. The molten glass will cover up those little holes we drilled, but when we blow it out, those will become little windows in the side of the sculpture. We put up the sculpture again just to reinforce that. So if you look up on the big screen, that's what I mean by windows. So here we go. We're going to dip it back into our big tank of molten glass. The glass inside that oven is 2100 degrees. We're going to drip a little off into that can. And now we'll round it out, make it nice and even. Well, the tool is made out of wood, and oh no, he's got a different one now, but yeah, he's just squirting water on that. It's a pad of just ordinary newspaper soaked in water. So as Ben shapes it, his assistant holds a wooden paddle in front of his arm to shield him from the heat. Take advantage of our big screen. We have some nice close-ups. And sometimes you can see details that you can't see from a distance. You can see where he drilled the holes. Now we have little clear spots, and as we expand it, they'll become little windows so you can see into the interior of the sculpture. Does anybody have any questions? So right now, we're letting the bubble cool and stiffen a bit. And I think they're going to dip it once more into the clear molten glass. So each time we dip it in and coat it with the clear molten glass, it's called taking a gather. We can't dip it in once and get all the glass we need, so we dip it in, round it out, let it harden, and then just repeat that process until we have all the glass we need to make whatever we're making. Can we put up one of Ben's sculptures just to clue everybody in where we're going? So we're making a sculpture, not this exact one, but in this style. So it's going to have the one color on the inside, a different color on the outside, and the wavy lines around the surface, and several of those clear windows. The forms that Mr. Cobb make are inspired by parts of the human body, hearts, lungs, stomachs, but they're very stylized. Some of the work that Mr. Cobb makes this week will be on exhibit at the Bellevue Art Museum starting November 6th at their biannual glass survey show. So we're rounding it out, making it nice and even. That scoop-shaped tool is called the block, B-L-O-C-K. It's made out of wood. It's stored in a bucket of water as long as the wood is wet. The tool doesn't burn too much, and it doesn't leave any marks as he shapes the glass. So the next part of this operation we're going to do is called jacking it down. Ben's going to take a pair of metal tongs and squeeze the glass and make a sharp crease in it. That sharp crease will be the place where you can break the glass away from the metal pipe. So Sarah in the yellow shirt, Sarah Gilbert, she's going to get the glass very hot and soft. Bring it to Ben. And he's getting the area where he's going to make the crease extra hot and extra soft, so he can shape that easily. So Ben has those metal tongs in his hand. Those are called the jacks. And squeezes it as his assistant turns it. And he's making a nice sharp notch. So the man seated to the left of the bench, he's the guy that's blowing. He's blowing through the steel tube and inflating the glass while Ben shapes it. When he holds the glass down at an angle like that, the glass is soft and will actually stretch under its own weight. So the bubble's getting longer. Yes? So Nick, seated to the left, is blowing as Ben shapes it. The next thing we're going to do is give it a good squeeze. It's going to be somewhat flat in shape. It's not going to be round completely. So Ben has in his hand 2 pads of cork, like cork in a wine bottle. The cork allows us to press on the glass without leaving any marks. So you notice when we squeeze it, we have to stop turning it. You'll see if you watch closely, you'll see the glass starts to sag down. So as we squeeze it, it sags down, and then they flip it 180 and let it sag back into position. that's always a team sport. You always work as a team. So these guys are just assisting them. They don't take any credit for the. So the next part of this operation will be to transfer the sculpture from the rod it's on now, the blowpipe, to a second steel rod called the punty. We're going to stick the second rod onto the bottom, then we'll break the glass away from the original pipe. So the second rod, the punty, will hold it from the bottom while we shape the top. Do you guys have any questions? Yes, sir. Are left on the surface and you want to brush them off. Well, let me see. Okay. Yeah, I think probably before we finish this one, we'll probably be taking lunch. I think we'll probably finish this about 10 to 1. No, that's good. This is called the punty, and it's gonna hold the sculpture from the bottom. So we're gonna stick it on the bottom. So it's basically a temporary handle to hold it from the bottom while we shape the top. When Ben feels that that bond is strong enough, we'll take a pair of tweezers, dip them in water, drip a little water onto where we want it to break. The cold water will hit the hot glass and crack it, and then a sharp tap will be able to remove the piece from the metal pipe. What do you got there? Chocolate cookies? Can I buy a chocolate cookie? You're what? $2? I love chocolate cookies. Chocolate bar. As long as it's chocolate. Yes, I like comments. A bar. I'll take a bar. Egg. Thank you. I will. He's on the phone, but I'll tell him. Oh, cash money. All right. Hi, I will. Right before your very eyes. So the glass at the very top of the sculpture is often a little bit thick. So we're taking the tweezers and stretching it out a little bit. Then we're going to trim that stretch part off. Get a little chip, get it hard, get it out. No, no. So Ben is using that kind of flared, gnarled part as kind of a handle, and it allows him to grip the glass and stretch the neck out. And once he's stretched it out and got it to the right angle and shape that he wants, then we'll bust that gnarly part off. So we're getting pretty close. When we finish this sculpture, we can't just set it on a table and let it cool on its own. If we did that, it would cool too quickly and unevenly, and it would shatter. So we're going to take the sculpture off the metal rod and place it in an oven called the annealing oven, where it'd be cooled slowly overnight. Each day, we heat up the annealing oven to 920 degrees. We place all the objects that we make during the day in there, and then at night, we cool everything down all at once. The annealing oven has a little computerized thermostat, so we can automatically set it for 12 hours, 24 hours, however long we want to take to cool it. The thicker and more complicated an object is, the longer we take to cool it. Melted a bunch of them together. And it's like a striped sheet. If you roll the striped sheet up, made it into a tube, and so we blew it up into a little bowl, a little striped bowl, and then we put another colored glass. So we're getting ready to take it off the metal rod, the punty. You can see one of the glass blowers has put on some big yellow gloves. Those yellow gloves are made out of Kevlar. Kevlar is a fire-resistant insulating material. When he grabs that sculpture, it'll be about 1,000 degrees. At that temperature, the glass will be hard, and we'll carry it to our annealing oven to cool slowly overnight. In order to get the glass off the metal rod, we're going to take a pair of tweezers, dip them in water, drip a little water on the joint between the metal rod and the sculpture. That'll crack the glass just at that joint, and then a light tap and off it comes. Yes. No. Well, I mean, he knew generally what he was going to make, but he didn't draw it out or have an exact shape. He kind of made that as he goes, but he knew the general direction. So let's have a big hand for Ben Cobb and his team, Sarah Gilbert, Nick Davis, Gabe Feenan, Sayuri Fukuda. So that concludes our demonstrations for this morning. We're gonna take an hour lunch. If anybody has any questions for me before I go to lunch, I'd be happy to answer.
Oh, I was studying painting. My painting prof said, well, okay, your schedule looks good here. You've got some 3D classes, but you're 2 credits short. And if you don't have a full load, they won't give you an assistantship. I said, well, that won't do. What should I take? And he ran his finger down the list, and he came to one that said 2 credits, and he said, here, take that. And I said, what is it? And he said, it doesn't matter. It's 2 credits. And it was the second glass blowing class in America. Experimental class. This is a series of glasses that I've been doing for the last 5 years that we call cameo cut glass. So we came here a year and 3 months ago and blew cups, or blanks I call them, that have colors on the outside and clear on the inside. And then I took them to the engraving machine. I carved through each color down to the color that's below it and make a pattern. These are not finished at this stage. Then I bring them here. We're going to put glass inside the bubble and pick it up and reheat it and blow it out. But this color that's on the outside of this bubble will also be on the outside of the final piece. You can make any shape you want after you've got it all attached. And here are some. This is a cup and a finished piece.
A slight tap, the piece is broken free and on its way to the annealer, where it will cool down for the next several hours.
If I could have my biggest dream come true, it would be that people see me as an artist as well as an educator, so that I can have my cake and eat it too. It's good, huh?
The color in glass comes from adding various materials to the mixture of raw ingredients called batch. Most of the colorants are compounds containing some kind of metal. For example, adding cobalt to clear glass creates a deep blue. Tin and antimony can be used to create white glass, and gold chloride can produce a rich red or pink colored glass. Colored glass is melted in furnaces, just like clear glass, and then is usually rolled into bars for storage and easy application. In order to apply color bar to a bubble, we first need to preheat the color to approximately 950 or 1000 degrees Fahrenheit in a color oven or garage. Once warm, the color is then picked up on the end of a punty rod using a little bit of clear glass as a support. The color is then heated in the 2300 degree glory hole to soften it and make it malleable, while another artist creates a small bubble of clear glass on a blowpipe. Once warm, the color is dropped over the clear bubble, and then using a variety of hand tools or the steel marver, the color is rolled back over the clear in an even layer. This process is called dropping color, or creating a color overlay. Depending on the project, that bubble is then usually gathered over with clear glass and blown into the final form. The finished product may appear to be all made from colored glass, but when viewed in cross-section, we can see that there is only a thin layer of color sandwiched between many layers of clear glass.
Yes, he was a shiny old man. I'm John Toriano. I'm from New York City. I have this theory about the attraction of glass, and I think we're genetically hardwired to respond positively to sparkly and shiny things. These are all the teardrops that are the raindrops of the glass gods. It's part of my, just kidding, agricultural aesthetic theory. When you reach in to take a gather, it's like you're reaching into the center of the earth, right? And you're doing something with it. You're making a shiny object. If you imagine a time when, we were just primitive peoples, and you would see a sparkly thing, it wouldn't be very often. And it would be magical because, why? Because you could hold a piece of the sun in your hand. And the sun is everything, right? No sun, no life. I've always thought of myself as a painter first and foremost. With painting, you have to be able to communicate with one shape, something that's three-dimensional. I don't think any artist, for example, can make art without being involved with glass in some way. Maybe it's just with slides of their work, but it's about looking, and it's about seeing. And glass is a very important tool for that. For me, I've never really been a glass artist, but I've always had glass in my art ever since about 1969, I would say, when I was using dots to create the illusion of space, kind of like sky, though I didn't think of it as sky at first. Then I started to look at photographs of the sky in order to get more interesting configurations and distributions of dots. And then because I was looking at those, I started reading about it, and I started making relationships between astronomical ideas of space and painterly ideas of space. And I found that the astronomical ideas gave me more license than the kind of formalist Greenbergian ideas about space did. The project that we're working on here at the museum, I started it a couple weeks ago at Pilchuck, where I wanted to see what I could do in a columnar shape. Ever since about 1974, on and off, I've been making these column paintings that are half-round lozenge shapes of different sizes. What I tried to do with those is create a paradox between the physicality of them coming out from the wall and the illusionness of them, both physically and visually. And I wanted to see if those ideas could translate to glass. And in a way, I'm trying to make them as close to a painting as you can.
Yeah, and you had a recipe kind of written out.
Yeah. I'm used to working on my own all the time, and it takes a lot more energy to get the momentum going on your own than it does when you have a crew and a group of people. And so one of the pleasures I take from working in a place like the museum here is the kind of communal energy that helps support the process of making work. You don't question it so much. You just go in, you get up, you have your coffee, and you start making work. And that's refreshing. You see what I mean by them being figurative, or beings of some kind? Like post-apocalyptic, but with really nice outfits.
To fabricate a scale model float plane out of glass takes tremendous effort. Figuring out the exact proportions of the propeller, the length of the body versus the wingspan were all extremely difficult. The Legacy project started off as a collaboration between the Museum of Glass and the Murdoch Charitable Trust. We were commissioned to design and fabricate a glass airplane to commemorate Jack Murdoch. We started by overlaying two contrasting colors of glass that would later show the design elements in the plane. vacuuming the glass at a temperature of over 1500 degrees. We create a small color cup to allow for a nice even distribution of color. The colored cup was then stuffed with clear glass to give us enough mass to make the body or the fuselage of the plane. Glassblowing is a team effort. Here at the Museum of Glass, we're unique in that this team has been working together for over 10 years. Each member of our team played a specific role in the creation of the plane. We use a variety of tools to shape and design the body. As you can see here, we're using some cork paddles to rough it out. The body is then transferred to yet another blowpipe so we can finish up the tail of the fuselage. Using those same cork paddles, we give the bottom of the plane a gentle curve before it's put away. After the plane is finished being formed, it's put away into an annealing oven to cool for several days. Once the fuselage was made, we moved on to making the pontoons. We decided we needed to fabricate a steel mold to allow us to make multiples. In order to have the pontoons match the plane, we used the same white color bar. This time, it is solid. The solid glass is then heated up to approximately 2000 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it's pressed into a steel mold. The pontoons are then put into another annealing oven to cool down. In our cold shop, the fuselage of the plane is now being ground or sanded down to remove any unwanted material. We then taped off the plane, and using our sandblaster, we revealed the tail numbers, the windows, and the pinstripes on the fuselage of the plane. The sandblasting process is often very rewarding as the color is quickly revealed, bringing life to the aircraft. After being sandblasted, the planes were then returned to the cold shop to be cleaned up and polished. The wings, the vertical and the horizontal stabilizers were all water jet cut out of handmade sheet glass, again made from the same white color to match the body of the plane. Once the glass parts were finished, we fabricated a small steel structure to hold the pontoons to the body of the plane. The nose cone was turned on a lathe while the propeller was carved out of a sheet of steel to make a fully functional propeller. Now that we have all the parts of our plane, it was brought back to the cold shop where the assembly began. The vertical and horizontal stabilizers were notched out to fit the tail of the plane, while the wing was glued into place. The gluing process takes many hours. We start with 2 clean surfaces, apply the glue, and it sits for over 72 hours before a full cure. It was an honor and a challenge to work on the legacy project for the Murdoch Charitable Trust.
Powder is the smallest size of colored glass available and can be very versatile when used in the creation of artwork. Powder is made by crushing frit in a ball mill. When used like frit, the powder is rolled through, and the heat of the gather is enough to melt the color onto the surface. Powder can also be sifted onto the outside of a bubble or gather to create various densities of pigmentation and shading. The application of different color powders can create both abstract designs and naturalistic color patterns, such as the skin of animals. Powder can be melted smooth or left dry and cakey on the surface of the piece.
Most people see Hilltop as a program. I see it more as like a family. I'm Maishan Cabrera. I'm originally from California, but I'm here in Tacoma now. Well, at first, I was a little stoked that we moved, but then reality kind of hit me, and I kind of thought, I can't see my family anymore, and it was kind of depressing at first. In California, art to us was just basically drawings and paintings and stuff. We didn't see any sculpting or anything like that, and especially out of glass, I've never heard of that. When I saw it, I was like, I'm getting in this program as soon as possible. They said I could sign up, and I started the next day.
Hilltop Artists is a nonprofit organization founded in 1994 with the help of Dale Trujillo. It started off in a small wood shop and now provides hot glass instruction to over 550 kids annually. I'm Trenton Kiocho, and I'm from Tacoma, Washington, born and raised. I was kind of getting in trouble with my mom, so she had me move in back with my dad in Tacoma. And first day of school, we were signing up for classes, and I noticed they had a glass program, and I was kind of curious about it. And I signed up for that class, and I've just been doing it ever since that day. Right now with the program, I'm actually a part-time instructor with the production team. So our hope with the Hilltop Artist program is that the kid leaves with a little bit more self-esteem, a little more confidence to pursue their goals, whether it be glass blowing or anything else that they'd want to pursue. Our mentors at Hilltop focus on increasing student academic success and interpersonal success. We all have our own issues outside of work, but I think for those 3 hours, we get to come together and be a part of a team and be a part of something else. So our focus this week at MOG is to produce a body of work for our upcoming luncheon fundraiser that will happen October 7th. And all this money that we're going to raise from this luncheon is going to go back into the program to help fund the cost.
There's 3 of us on the floor, 3 people from the MOG Hot Shop team, and we're using the kids to help us make their auction pieces.
Just in these 2 days, I've learned so much. Just they help you. If they see something they can help you with, they're like, oh, do this. I'm rolling up cane, and they told me, hey, roll up cane towards you, hotter, keep it. Simple stuff that I probably thought about in my head, but I'm like, oh, I don't know if I should do this. Might be doing it wrong. But then they're like, do this, and it becomes easier. There is no limit to your imagination. You can do anything. Glass is just an example of it. There's always new techniques. People always say, oh, there's nothing new. There's always something new. Glass, I can work with somebody one day, I can learn a new technique.
I wish there was something like that when I was growing up. I could have really used this, and now for me to be, on the side where I'm actually helping these kids, it's really rewarding, and I've never felt like I was a role model, and I definitely feel like I am now, so I'm trying to take that and own it, I guess.
When I see the pieces in the museum, it kind of makes me want to like be that person. Like I want someone to like see something of mine and be shocked and surprised in how it's like so like detailed and colorful and big.
The end idea would be to make a large cube about 5 feet by 5 feet, all made out of stacking glasses. But that would be about 5,400 cups. All in clear, except for kind of an amorphous shape inside that's made out of gray tones. And as those gray tones get stacked up against each other, it'll be harder for the light to permeate through, and eventually you'll get sort of just like this dark shadow mass hovering in the center of this cube. Basically, if we zoom in, it's all stacks of glasses. And then where the gray is, these are all the same gray tone, just stacked up against each other, and that's what's making that dense center. That's been fun. I think I'm assuming that the team was hoping to do more larger stuff when I came here. But I think it's been a lot of fun and interesting, just kind of turn everyone loose into more factory setting. Sarah's just cranking out starts, and Ben and I are just filling these molds, and then today Gabe's just been hot popping. So we've got Sarah gathering up start. She'll make just about a ping pong ball, golf ball size bubble with a jack line in it. We'll let that cool down, and once that's chilled out, we'll take a post dip on it, and then with that good gooey runny glass, we'll extend the bubble, drop into an aluminum mold. The aluminum mold's been lined with linseed oil and cork, and we'll blow up the bubble and drop it down, spin out a crispy cup. Those get hot popped. So we have a file set up, and you make a little score about 1/4 inch on the side of the glass where you want it to break, and then we run a hot torch with a little razor sharp flame on it. And we spin that on a Lazy Susan. As it's going around, that flame is hitting it. Wherever that little score line is, it'll make a crack pop all the way around. You can take the top off and chuck that back in the furnace eventually. Cheers, fellas. Cheers. Yeah. Cheers.
Optic molds are used by glassblowers to create textures and patterns in blown glass. Nowadays, most optic molds are made from aluminum, but in the good old days, they were often made from cast bronze. They come in different shapes and sizes, depending on their desired effect. To begin, a bubble is formed and is shaped into the rough contour of the inside of the optic mold. The bubble is then heated, inserted into the mold, and blown with force. The resulting bubble can then be shaped into whatever form the artist desires. Today we're going to make an optic twist cup. So the bubble is held at the end while the pipe is rolled on the bench. This creates a spiraling pattern in the glass. The cup is blown to form, puntied up on the bottom, trimmed, and then opened up.
It's a well-oiled show business machine, ladies and gentlemen. My work it kind of sits at the intersection of technology, entertainment, and art. The projects take a lot of different formats. It could be performative. I had a big project that was a game show for many years. I got interested in 3D printing because it was kind of this marriage of digital and physical, which is like where we all live nowadays, right? And the latest work that I'm doing here at Museum of Glass is about light.
Here we go.
A lot of the work that I do is about being approachable and reaching an audience that may not otherwise go to art events. That's what brought me to Coney Island and performing. I got really interested in 3D printing and 3D scanning. Like, we live our whole lives now in computers, but then we're physical beings, right? So 3D printing appealed to me because it was a way of translating that digital life into physical, and 3D printing brought me to 3D carving. Instead of an additive process of building up a model with a 3D printer, I'll start with a block of graphite and use a CNC router to remove some tracked material and create these molds for glass castings. And that led to the forms that I'm doing now. So a lot of the forms are based on sacred geometries or just, mathematical geometries. So a lot of the cone molds that I'm using here today, they're based on a truncated icosahedron form. It's a 5 and a 6-sided cone. They fit together like a soccer ball. I like physical work because it has permanence, particularly glass. Plastic, less so. A lot of the work is about play, so it's like we're making these things, and then there's gonna be the next phase of the project is about shining light through the work, and we'll see where it all goes. Glass is this amazing sort of magical thing, the way it moves when it's molten, and I've really liked this graphite process because it's so fast and immediate to just pour the glass and pop it out of the mold, and multiples has been a big theme in my work over the years, and that kind of speaks to me a little bit as well. When I reflect on why do I use glass, I found that there's a lot of people out there making things out of glass because they can and not because they should. And for me, I didn't have something that I wanted to make that needed to be glass. This project needs to be made out of glass. The whole idea of this work that is about light is really sort of a response to what's going on in America right now, a response to what's going on in the world. This work is really about sort of turning off. The whole world has gotten to this point where we're so constantly stimulated by our phones and the news cycle and everything, and it's a lot about getting people to slow down and stop and just experience.
I'm no longer interested in making work for galleries. I'm no longer interested in making work for museums. I'm trying to create a different format for me to work in. This is what I'm excited about. In 1980, when I was 6 years old, my family moved from England to the Chicago suburbs, and we moved into a house designed by Bruce Goff, which is called the Ford House. I describe it as living in a sculpture. It leaks, it's freezing cold in the winter, it's blazing hot in the summer. A lot of the things that you expect a house to do, it doesn't do, but it does a lot of great things that most houses will never do. I became an artist because of that house, and it sounds like an overstatement to say that, but I really believe that's true. I made a body of work that was how that house, how the Ford House shaped me to be an artist. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do next? And I decided I want to see